So today we're going to talk about conversational AI, which is chatbots, machine learning, fun stuff like that. Anyone here built a chatbot before? One. Not a real one. Not one with AI. All right, so hopefully I'm going to make it a lot easier for you guys. So we're going to talk about basically an introduction, what it means to build a bot. And it's mostly going to be demos today. And we're going to build a bot from scratch and deploy it and integrate it, set up security and all kind of stuff. And then talk about some upcoming features as well. So basically with conversational AI, it's been like a niche in the past where you have to hire like a specialized vendor. They have a bunch of data scientists, machine learning experts, software engineers, and all kind of other disciplines involved in that. And so it's been kind of a burden for people to get into this space. With the a few years ago we released a bot framework. It gave us a bunch of tools to develop bots in an easier way. So we have Lewis. We have a bunch of tools to like train an AI model. There's some frameworks to help you deploy it into a web server and so forth. So it's become easier. Today we're going to talk about sort of the next step and where we are today, which is business users, project managers, pro developers can all work together to develop a bot. And building machine learning models is optional, but you can still get AI in your bot. So we're going to go through how that would work. There's still a lot of challenges today. So like the subject matter experts that know like what information to put in the bot, how it should respond, how the conversation should flow, often don't have AI or software engineering experience. Integrating with backend systems is difficult. You need to get engineers. We all know there's not enough engineers around. Keeping like with a higher maintenance cost of development and so forth, there's also the cost of keeping it up to date. So if you need an engineer to go make changes to your bot, every time you want to make a small change, it becomes a very tedious process, and there's a high risk that the entire thing gets canned. Improving conversational experience requires a very specialized sort of telemetry pipeline and analytics reporting and so forth. You want to see what things are going well, where the conversation flow falls off and so forth. And developing that by hand is also very difficult. And then all of this funnels into the cost of building and maintaining a bot. So what does this look like if you use Power Virtual Agents? So Power Virtual Agents is a SaaS tool that enables people, like you don't need to be a software engineer, but it definitely helps to be an engineer. But we have a lot of people that get started without any sort of computer science knowledge or technical background. So we have a tool that allows you to develop stuff really fast. You can get started, you provision the bot, you add some stuff, and you can deploy it within minutes. Doesn't mean you can't do a bunch of stuff. Like you can add code to it, you can integrate it with APIs, you can do full-blown software engineering in the backend if you'd like. And because it's a SaaS, you don't need to worry about the scalability, like horizontal scalability. Machine learning can be CPU intensive. You might want to do GPU acceleration and so forth. You don't need to worry about any of that stuff. And there's because it's a SaaS, there's also a bunch of security related constraints that are provided by Microsoft. So what does it look like to build a bot? It's kind of a life cycle, like a continuous process, just like we do software engineering. There's some stuff that's a little bit specialized. So at least with Power Virtual Agents, when you start, you get a user experience, you name the bot, you create it. And then you can actually go and scrape stuff from a website. So you need to get your bot seeded with some useful content, right? And often you have an FAQ website or some interesting material lying around. So you can actually just bring in a link to that website, and it'll go scan it and figure out what are relevant pieces of like questions and answers that should be added to the bot. Then if you feel like you need to add more or more sophisticated interactions on some specific topics or just across the board, you can use the very powerful tools to develop topics and dialogues that guide the user through some sort of problem solving or other interaction. You can, if you have any backend APIs, databases, and so forth, we have a ton of connectors that allow you to integrate with it. If you have your own, like a custom API, as long as you have an open API definition for that API, you'll be able to load it in and then connect to it and invoke it and so forth. If you end up with some scenarios where the tooling, like the basic tooling, is not sufficient, it's a pretty straightforward path to actually extend the bot with, we have a C# and JavaScript SDK, Python SDK. You can host some APIs that can actually do more sophisticated conversational interactions as well. And once you're happy with your bot, you can deploy it to a bunch of, like we have a bunch of out-of-box channels, and I think we'll show some in the demos after this. And after you deploy it and talk to it, you'll be able to get out-of-box analytics to see which parts of the bot are doing well, where it's falling off, and so forth. So that's the basic process. Obviously, you iterate on it just like you would with other software. And so we can just go build a bot. So I'm inside Power Virtual Agents, and I'm going to share a link. I think if you have an AAD, you can sign up and create a bot on this. So it should be fairly straightforward. And yeah, all I need to do is give it a name and pick a language. So I'll say live demo, and we're going to do English today. I'm going to create my bot. And I want to seed it with some content, so I'm going to go to the VS Live conference page here. See if I can find some sort of Q&A here. FAQ, there we go. So I'm going to take this FAQ page. You can see here, the content of this page is like is a basic questions and answers. There's different categories, taxi, networking, and so forth. So I want to have the bot be able to answer some of these questions. Right now, I created the bot. The bot is still being provisioned. It takes about a minute. In the meantime, I can try out some of the sample content that's in there. So you can see it comes with some basic default topics that probably you don't need depending on your scenario. But here's just a simple example. So I have a bot that is able to like answer questions about store hours if I ever had the need for that. In this case, I'm going to go to my topics page, and I'm going to say suggest topics and add a hyperlink to this page and just click start. So what this is going to do is queues up a background job that's going to go scrape that website and look for any interesting sort of question and answer pairs that are on that website. And then after some time, it will output them and suggest them to me. So maybe I can, in the meantime, show a sort of simple topic about store hours. So you can see that in order to get a topic, topics are sort of the basic building block here. Topics have natural language triggers. So in this case, you can see I have 4 sample trigger phrases, which are different variations of the same underlying meaning. And what this does is we've built a very large multi-purpose AI model in the backend. So we have some cluster server somewhere that has loaded like huge AI models, and those have been trained on a massive set of like generic pieces of data. And what we do with our AI technology is we take the examples that are listed here and use that to like extract the underlying semantic meaning of those phrases, and then we match that against what the user is saying in the chat window. So what it means is neither the author nor the end user has to understand AI. We'll run both of them through our generic model and then try to match them up. So we'll see some of that in a moment. You can see that the process to get these topic suggestions finished, it figured out all the different questions that were on that page, and it's suggesting like, hey, would you like to create a topic? So you can see this is what it would suggest. So I'm just going to go take all of these and add them to my list. I'm happy with all of these suggestions. I can add multiple websites. I can repeat the process. So this is a great way to get a bot to be, to do some basic stuff in the domain that you're interested in rather quickly, like without having to, reformat content or see things in a different way. Let's look at the meal. I think we had something about meal options. I'm going to turn this on. So there's something about meals included with registration, and I think there's something about a special meal requester. So by default, can I say, can I request a vegetarian? Oh, hold on. I didn't turn this one on. Special. There we go. So the topics that are turned off can be used as a sort of draft state if you're still playing around with them or trying to develop them. You can avoid them from, or stop them from being triggered. So in this case, so can I request vegetarian meal? And so you can see, like, I have, in this case, there's some ambiguity with the, like, special meal request and meals included with registration. It did sort of understand that it's one of these two things. And this process here of, like, did you mean, so I can click on this, this selected option. It's a great way to sort of fine tune and improve the bot. So right now, if we see, like, if we set up this bot like this, deploy it, and have a bunch of people talk to it, if they all say like this similar type of sentence, and we continuously, like, ask you, like, hey, did you mean this or did you mean this, and so forth, we actually keep track of, like, what users are clicking on, and at some point, like, a background job kicks in and, like, refines the model. So there's some, I'm just gonna show here. So there's it's called automatic triggering improvements. So basically, it'll, like, learn from existing conversations to make the next ones better. In this case, like, I want to basically request a vegetarian meal. Now, my bot is not very smart, right? Like, right now, it's saying when you register, you can ask for a special meal request. But actually, I want the bot to handle this. So, like, I don't want to get these questions. I don't want to just give answers. I want to actually serve up this request. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this topic. I'm going to say, sure, I can help you with that. And so what I want to do here is I'm going to go collect some information about the user. So first thing, I think I'm going to get their email address. So I'm going to ask a question. What's your email address? And I need to be a little bit more specific. So sure, I can help you. Vegetarian options. And so in this case, I want to identify from the user input an email address. So I don't want to, if you've ever seen an email regular expression, it's quite long and probably still incorrect depending on the different user input. So what I want to do is just recognize email. So there's about 40 pre-built entities. And an entity is it's like a data, it's like more specialized in the data type. I know we're all developers here, or mostly developers here. So think of it as like an email address for us is like a specialization of string. And we have like color, content, and so forth. They're all specializations of string. When we store their value, we store them as text. But when it comes to like extracting it from natural language, we have special rules. So like for an email, we understand like how an email address is structured, and we understand how to pick it out of a sentence. So in this case, I'm asking for an email address, and I'm going to store that in a variable called email address. That seems simple enough. I also need to ask the user, like, what kind of dietary restriction do they have, right? I'm going to ask another question, and this time, if I look at my list of entities here, like I don't have have anything for like dietary restriction that's kind of a specific thing. So what I'm going to do is just create my own thing. So here I'm going to say, you know, for sure, kosher, vegan, halal, something like this, and I'm gonna say which type of restriction. And I'm probably not gonna be able to enumerate all of them, so I'm also gonna create another category here. It's automatically generating some conditions for me, so that I'm able to route stuff here. What I want to do is, in this case, I don't want to really give different answers based on selection. I really want to store the user input in a database somewhere. And then if they select something else, I want them to provide me some additional input. So I'm gonna say if they select other, I'm gonna ask another question. And here I'm gonna say, hey, please describe your dietary restriction. And this time I don't really know what the user is going to say. They're just going to give me a sentence in this case. So I'm going to say, just take whatever they respond and put it in a variable. So entire response. This is the note. We'll call it notes. There we go. And so this is a piece of text that we stored, and we've also captured their restriction. What I want to do is save this in a database. Now, to stay in the spirit of the sort of low-code world, I'm going to use Dataverse, which is part of the Power Platform to store this data. In order to call the API to store the data, I'm going to create a flow, a Power Automate flow. So I'm going to say call an action, and I don't have an action here to save dietary restrictions, so I'm going to create a new one. And this takes me to Power Automate. So Power Automate is if you're familiar with like Logic apps, this is kind of like the low-code version of Logic apps, and it lets you build workflows that basically operate either when you call them or based on some event trigger and so forth. There's a lot of integrations and a lot of connectors. What I need to do here is add some input. So first thing that I need from the user is the specific restriction that they entered, and then also the notes that they provided. So this is the optional set of notes that they provide if they click other. And then now I want to store it in a database. So I don't have a database or a table. So I'm going to go use Dataverse to create a new table and do that here, also like directly within the UI. So we'll call it like special meal requests or something like that. Special. And so this table is it's using Dataverse, and we're not going to go into a lot of detail of Dataverse today, but it's basically like a compute and storage platform that lets you quickly build. Like in this case, I really want like my .NET equivalent is like, I'm going to build an ASP.NET web app, and I'm going to put Entity Framework and a SQL Server there, and I just want to store some data and return some data, you know, the typical like to-do list scenario. But in this case, like I don't want to write that code, so I'm just going into this place and creating a table. So let me go add some columns. So I have my to go back here, I have my two fields, like a restriction and notes. I'm just going to create them both as a text field. And this is basically, by creating the table, there's already an API available to read and write data. And when I add columns, I'm like basically augmenting the schema. Essentially, at runtime, augmenting the schema. Just one more column here. For the notes, it's fine. Oh, and we actually forgot one input because we are also capturing the user's email address. Am I getting, sorry, what was the question? Am I getting edits? Yeah, so we'll show some interesting scenarios. Right now, I'm just asking the user for their email address and then asking them to type a response. It'll do some validation. We'll see it in a second. And there's some more nifty ways to get the user's email address depending on the integration. So let me see. I didn't add email. So there we go. And then what I can do here is add an action. And I want to, so these are, this is like, I'm within Power Automate, and I want to do some action. And so here I can do all kind of stuff. Like I can insert a row into Excel. I could connect to SQL Server, MySQL, any kind of backend system. And as I mentioned before, if there's no specific data connector for this, like we've seen this before with customers where I have an open API file, but I don't have a connector. There's a way to create a custom connector, upload your like Swagger, and then it'll become a UI component in this interface. So it's really easy to like integrate any sort of backend APIs with this. So in this case, I'm going to use Dataverse because I was just creating a table in Dataverse, and I think now I'm able to see. Let's see what are other columns. Hold on. custom special request. There we go. So we had email and we have the restriction, and I think we had a notes column. There we go. I don't have any data in this table. Obviously, like I didn't interact with it. So I'm going to click Microsoft Dataverse here and then say add a new row. So what table do I want? Special meal request. There we go. And then you can see this is also part of the Open API integration. It's able to sort of understand, like based on parameters in the actions. In this case, I'm saying add a new row. When I pick a table, it understands the schema of that table I picked. So you can see there's a bunch of like default columns, but in this case, I'm really interested in the email address that I had. So here I have the email input, and I have the notes. So I'm just basically data binding my inputs to this API to my backend table. And the restriction, notes, and then there's restriction here. There we go. And I don't really need to return any outputs, so I'm gonna save this, and I need to provide a name, which is let me actually put the email and the name. All right. Oh, and I should actually name this thing. So this is we'll call this is like becomes like an API, right? So we'll call this like insert special meal request. Not a very RESTful name, but you know we have a user experience to guide them. Let's go here, and what we want to do now is we basically have this flow. I've built this what amounts to an if statement here. If this is the dietary restriction. So if the selected dietary restriction matches other restriction, I'm going to ask an additional question, but I basically have two paths here that converge on, in this case, on like an end. So what I want to do, call this API, but I want to make sure the other path also goes to this API. So in this case, I'm going to say, what was it called? Insert special meal request. There you go. I'm going to remove this end node here. And what I can do is drag this one over here. And now we make sure that, like, you know, this is like if other go do this, else jump forward and go directly here. And then the nodes, in the else case, nodes will be like a null value, a blank value. So I'm going to take their email address, their the restriction, and so forth, and then I'm going to say show message. That's done. Thanks. Great. And I'm going to add another, because we had just this options. I'm going to add another trigger phrase here. So I'm saving my topic. It directly updates the, like if you're used, I guess not many of you have built a bot before, but if you're used to using some other platforms, you need to, this action of like adding a single phrase, it could be a pretty big lift in some cases. It might mean like retraining an AI model, verifying that it doesn't conflict with other stuff and so forth. And so here it's pretty straightforward to add that. All right, so let's try it out. Vegetarian options. It's asking me what's my email address. I'm gonna go actually show my email address here. And now it's asking what type of restriction you have. So I'm gonna pick vegan. So what I hit? So I'm gonna close to. So what actually happened right now is I hit a specific type of a data flow that we integrated. So by accessing this variable notes, we try to make it like with conversation flow, it doesn't always follow the path that you think it should follow. And so sometimes people will be like in the middle of the flow, they'll be like, actually, I want to talk about something else. And so we try to do our best to allow those sort of interruptions to happen. One of the features that we built in is a more sophisticated data flow management. So basically, these variables, they're all like lazily loaded, basically. So think about it as like lazy in C#, something that when you first access it, will evaluate. And in this case, the evaluation is the question. So that's why I got this description here. And what I should have done here is made this parameter optional and like not bounded here. But right now, like because I didn't have this variable filled out, it actually asked me that question as a way to populate that variable. Even though the control flow moved forward to this action here, it found that like this nodes is null, and it actually triggered the question to populate the nodes variable. And this helps a lot with like sometimes building all the edge cases and conditions to like get people to answer a set of questions is really, it just becomes a big mess. And no matter how you model it, it becomes a big mess. So this lazy evaluation of variables really helps with that. So it said that's done, which sounds good to me. Let's see if this thing got populated. Do I need to? So yeah, you can see my data got stored in this table. The nice thing also about Dataverse is, so I created this table. Normally when you create like an ASP.NET web app with SQL Server and you build some simple like to-do list, or in this case, capturing some data, you need to then worry about like, okay, how am I going to do like failover, high availability, disaster recovery, all those things. How do I scale it out and so forth. And so what's nice about Dataverse is like I don't have to worry about any of these things. So anyone who's able to, you don't need to be like a distributed systems specialist to be able to build like a pretty robust distributed system in this tool. Obviously, like I could have also used any of the other connectors. I could have put in my SQL Server. I could have called another API and so forth. So I hope this sort of makes sense. Like I'm able to build a bot and integrate it with data fairly quickly. What if I want to take this bot and put it in Teams? So normally we would say, okay, let me go look up the Teams SDK. How do I build an app? How do I create a manifest? And how do I put an AAD app ID? There's a lot of stuff that you need to do. With PVA, you can say, I want to deploy to Teams. So I'm gonna, well, I need to first publish my bot. So publish is our deployment. Like it doesn't really do much in the backend for us. Like our deployment is like, because this is SaaS, we're just like moving around some database records. But basically what it means is the content, whatever I've built, becomes available to any outside consumer. So in this case, I want to put my bot in Teams. I can put it on. Let me first show this website thing as well. So if I want to put my bot on a website, I can literally copy like this is like an iframe. So if I put the iframe on a website, I'll get a chat window which I can integrate. There's a demo website as well. So let me jump to that one. So this one, you know, if I did so you can see like it's starting this flow in like a sort of chat window. I can get some code to put an iframe on my website as well for this. But I can also put it in Teams. So what I do is I turn on Teams. And what this does is it'll go communicate with, it'll like basically build up an app manifest and do a bunch of other stuff. But I can directly use it. So I'm currently signed in with a different account, so I'm going to cancel this and then say use the web app instead, and then hopefully be signed in on the same demo account. But it basically already built a Teams app and like published it into Teams, and all that stuff happened under the hood while that spinner was spinning. So now I have a full-blown Teams app via slide demo. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, we have a really basic, like there's a bare bones JavaScript SDK that you can use instead of the iframe. The iframe is like really sugarcoating the SDK basically, and you can also put it in like you can put it in mobile apps, and there's a bunch of other integrations for that. Yeah. So this is my bot, and I didn't modify the greeting, so it's still kind of a weird greeting, but you can see like it's the same bot that I just built. And you can see like it's prompting me for some of these options. We're deploying it so quickly that like there's some icon and other stuff that didn't get replicated to Teams yet, but this usually gets cleared up in about an hour or so. So yeah, it was really easy to put the bot in Teams. I can also secure the bot because some of this stuff, like especially if you build a bot for like coworkers, like internally we use some bots to talk about like engineering, like how's my deployment going and stuff like that. So we don't want other people to access them. And so what we can do is set up authentication for the bot. If your bot is only in Teams, we have a sort of shortcut where because when you communicate with Teams, we know that you're an AD user, we can validate you're in the same tenant and do a bunch of other checks. So we have a radio button for that and saying only that specific people in my tenant talk to it. I can create a list of security groups of people that can talk to the bot as well, or I can expose it to anyone in my tenant. So there's some access control related stuff here. The other thing is I can share my bot with either coworkers so I can share my bot with coworkers to allow them to edit my bot and collaborate on it. I can also say these users can talk to the bot and so forth. For the iframe integration, the web channel, there's some access keys here. You can allow completely anonymous access, and there's a lot of scenarios where you want completely anonymous access to your bot. Like I think for this conference FAQ, for example, you do want anyone to be able to talk to it. They don't need to authenticate. In some cases, you only want specific authenticated users to talk to the bot, but still integrate it on your website with a JavaScript SDK. So what you can do here is like obtain a key, which that key can be used to generate a token using a framework that we have. And that token allows you to start a conversation. So this way you can limit who can gain access to a token that can start a conversation. You can also use it to remember user state and so forth. There's a few other features which I think we don't need to go into details. So if I ever hit a scenario where I want like really fine-grained control in code over what messages come in and out of the bot, I can do that using something called Scales, which is basically I deploy a backend API that is able to understand conversation semantics. So there's a specific protocol and SDK we have for that lets you like develop API handlers for conversational stuff. They can do multiple interactions in a single API integration. We looked at some of the AI capabilities as well. I don't know why this is. So basically, these are like we don't want to expose our users to this like heavy machine learning data science stuff. So the AI features that we have are mostly like you enable the checkbox and see how it goes. We can we process like historical transcript data, look at how they're performing, and use that to like feed data into the bot to make it better. And there's a few other things where basically it's able to remember data and so forth. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a great question. So I think the question is, are people able to mess with like the overlap detection? Like you could think about like maybe there's some social media thing and people are going to teach it to go in a different direction. So the topic overlap detection, it only works on like the data if you've already fed it. So it's not going to bring in like new sources of data for specific topics. The one that does bring in like new suggestions is only based on when there's ambiguity. So if the bot suggested, do you want A or B? And users always click A when they say that specific trigger, then we feel like that's a good trigger for A. But you already have to trigger something that's ambiguous. And so I think it's pretty difficult to sort of doctor it. You can also yeah, so you can just turn it off, of course. And there's also a view to understand like what things are overlapping and how they interact and so forth. This one, I just created the bot like 20 minutes ago, so it didn't bring in any analytical data. We didn't talk about analytics yet, but there's a sort of built-in report here that shows, it's like how many sessions in total. Engagement rate is like, typically with the bot, like you see the bot here, and then in this case, like my session is engaged because I actually told it something that caused a trigger of a topic that someone developed. We have a lot of conversations that the bot says hi, and then the user ignores it. And so this one lets you see like how many total, and then engagement rate is like how many of those actually led to something. Resolution rate is, did they get to the end of a topic? So in our example, resolution rate, like my topic here, or my session here, if this ended now, it would be engaged because I triggered something, but it didn't resolve a problem. So what we say is, like, if we run all the way to the end of the topic, then we've resolved something, like some positive action has happened. And so we put that in the dashboard here. And escalation is, for some scenarios, like you want to actually hook this up to a call center. And then escalation rate is how many of the conversations resulted in an escalation to a human. And then abandon rate is, again, like this one, if I bail on it right now, it'll be considered abandoned. CSAT is captured at the end of a topic, which is kind of interesting. We should go through that. So what I can do at the end, it'll say that's done, thanks. And I can say end with survey. So this will, I'll go here. I'll just discard this, go here. So this end of conversation topic, it'll say, did that answer your question, yes or no? If it did answer the question, it'll ask you for to give a rating between like a star, where's that here? So to ask the user for a star rating, and this helps you track like which topic lead to low star ratings or high star ratings. So even if you did solve their problem, they're really unhappy about how you solved their problem. You'll be able to see that in the analytics dashboard, and you'll get like per topic breakdown as well. And each topic also has an analytics pivot on it. So yeah, hope that makes sense at a basic level. So we've seen like you can sign up really quickly. It only takes a few minutes to build a topic. There's built-in suggestions to get you started quickly. I didn't train an AI model. I didn't have to learn about AI, but I'm able to build a pretty like intuitive chatbot. And then all the data connectors help you like quickly gain access, like expose data to your bot, expose data to the users in a very rapid way. Just a slide here about like what is the architecture of PVA. Because I'm an engineer at heart, I always like to share that. We have Power Virtual Agents, a user experience that is able to, that basically connects to our APIs. All the topics, all the content is stored in data first, together with, like, for example, where we created those tables. There's tables for chatbot stuff as well. There's a bunch of lifecycle management around that. I can take everything I did and put it in export it and put it in source control, and then automatically deploy it to a different environment and so forth. So I can do full like lifecycle management like we're used to with DevOps, like in a development environment, a UAT environment, production environment, and so forth. So that's managed through some of the integrations we have with Data First. All of the channel integrations are going through Azure Bot Service. Our runtime basically like interfaces through that. And then on the back end, we integrate with Power Automate and with the bot framework skills. So just to also overlay this on the demo. I didn't show Bot Framework Composer. So it's Bot Framework Composer is an authoring tool that has more sort of, it has an expression language. You can do more data manipulation in there and some more sophisticated integrations. But I want to talk about what's coming soon. So today, like Microsoft has two ways of building bots, essentially, or two platforms with which you can build conversational AI tools. And one of them is the Power Virtual Agents, which we just showed. The other one is the Azure Bot Service and the Bot Framework and so forth. And so we want to bring these together and make it much easier to build bots. So what we have is a unified canvas that basically takes the power of all the like flexibility and power of the Bot Framework and then puts it in the easy to use and easy to manage SaaS platform. So there's a lot of other operations and a lot of other features we added to this. So you can do copy paste of different nodes. You can select multiple nodes, copy them, refactor them, and so forth. I can switch between a graphical view and a code view. So I think if we should have time to do a quick demo of this, which is pretty interesting. So everything I do in the canvas it already translates to like a sort of code behind, but we've taken the code behind and like just put it there behind the canvas. So you can, like what the edits you're making can also, like you immediately see how they reflect in code. You can copy paste code. You can copy a node and get like the code snippet for that one node and then paste it in another bot or paste it on Stack Overflow and get someone to help you out with your bot and so forth. We integrated a language called PowerFX. So PowerFX is like It's a formula language that we try to make it look like Excel, which aims to like lower the barrier for people to do data manipulation and like small snippets of code and so forth. You can still do a lot of interesting stuff with it. Like I'll try to do a quick demo after this. It's in multiple places, so it's the language that underpins Power Apps as well. Power Apps is a sort of application development equivalent to what we just saw. And then in Dataverse, I can create like calculated fields with this and so forth. In Power Virtual Agents, it's integrated. It's actually open source. So if you have it's based on C# and it's open source. So if you have I don't know, like during my career, I've often had the need, like, can I allow my users to build a formula and expression to like help them do some basic data manipulation. I don't want to deal with all their requirements. So maybe give them a way to do it. So you can actually look at this Power FX. It's an open source project. You can get a NuGet, put it in your project, and expose the expression language. That's pretty interesting. A lot of rich responses, so I can add videos, images, audio, cards, all kind of stuff to messages. That's coming very soon. Adaptive cards especially is very interesting. So it's like, think of it as a super lightweight HTML. So you can basically render a bunch of content and it's supported on a lot of different platforms like, Teams, Outlook, and so forth. They all have ways to render adaptive cards. So you can use it to get like very nice, rich content in a bot. There's event-driven triggering. So imagine like you've integrated the bot on a website and the user navigates to a different page or something happens in the browser and you want the bot to know about that. You can send it events and you can build event handlers inside of Power Virtual Agents. You can also have Power Virtual Agents emit events to the browser. So you say, would you like to navigate to this or would you like me to show you this, whatever. It can push an event down. You can handle it in JavaScript and show the appropriate content in the app. There's a bunch of speech-related authoring. We didn't cover speech today, but you can hook up the bot like to a phone number and build a full voice responder with this thing as well. And that one has specific building a message that works well on speech requires like proper intonation and highlighting, putting pauses between words and sentences and so forth. Which is there's something called SSML, which is a markup language that supports that. And then last but not least, data loss prevention. So data loss prevention is like our equivalent of having like firewall rules or VNet constraints. So you can say this bot should not call my internal SQL Server database and then put that data out on the street. So you can create a policy to enforce that and make sure that doesn't happen. And there's a similar thing with the lockbox, which is more niche. So like if you call Microsoft support and you don't want Microsoft engineers to see your data, you can enable this lockbox, and then whenever a Microsoft engineer needs to see some of your data based on a support ticket, you will get a request for that, and you need to approve that manually. So yeah, a bunch of links to get started. The main one is on the left. It'll take you to the product. You can create a bot. Should not be anything stopping you from doing that right now. I want to show also some of the new features that are coming up. Great. All right, so this looks the same, but it's an updated version of the canvas. And so this one has this is really we're releasing it later this year. So I'm just live demoing unreleased software. So hope you don't mind. You can see on my messages, I can do a lot more. I can add images, video, cards, and so forth. I can assign a variable, and I'll just show the power effects here as well. So I could do something I can be pretty elaborate with this. So I can say, switch the channel that I'm coming in from. So if I'm coming in through, let's say, channel ID telephony, I'll say thanks for calling. And else I'll just say hi. So it's basically like a full expression language. It has autocomplete, IntelliSense. We gave it a ton of context about the conversation. So like, you know, where they're calling from, if there's any user information, what's the user, how are they interacting with the bot and so forth. It's all available in the context. And actually, so I can take this and copy it, and then go to like Notepad and paste it, and you can see like it sort of dumps the underlying code for that node in here. So it's really portable and it's easy to transfer to other contexts or other systems. One thing that's also interesting is I still have a visual condition editor here, so I can say like if the channel system. Hello. There we go. So if the channel is Teams, I'll add a message that says, "Welcome to Teams." But I could maybe like I don't know. Sometimes I just like to write code, so I can switch my UI here to a sort of code behind view, and then you can see I can change stuff. So I can say, let me switch this to say telephony, and then I'll change the greeting to say like thanks for calling. I can switch back to my UI, and you'll see that we sort of reverse engineered the visual representation of the formula to say now we're filtering on telephony, and the message is thanks for calling. I can say that actually I don't like the way this looks, so I'm going to undo this. And you see that this updates welcome to Teams. Undo it again, and then now my Teams. There we go. And now it went back to my so. Basically, the undo stack that we're maintaining like is shared across the code behind and the visual editor, which should highlight that like we've really integrated them very well. These are all like pretty interesting basic scenarios. But I can also do something more interesting. So I can say, I'm bored. Please guess the 5-letter word. OK. All right. Can do that. Hello. Oh, that's interesting. So I suck at Wordle, right? Like, so I don't think I'll be able to guess this. So I'm gonna go fidget with this a little bit. So the guess. So I have this. You know, maybe I need to zoom out a little bit because of the resolution here. But this is like a more sophisticated example. It goes through and does some stuff. Actually, what I want to do here is. Like I'm never gonna guess this word. I'm just really bad at it. So I'm gonna just muck with this a little bit. I'm gonna say. So if the guess equals hello, then I'm just gonna say it's actually my guess is actually the word, not the original guess, and otherwise I'll do it. So hopefully. Let me see if I can get this to save. So the other interesting thing is like I have a natural like edit and continue here because I'm in a SaaS and I can push new content to the backend, but I'm also mid conversation, so I'm just gonna let this be. And so now if I say hello, oh, I win. That's great. It wasn't hello. Yeah, I'm not very good at this, but yeah. So you can see like this is pretty cool, and I can, of course, like if I want to share this with someone else, I say, hey, take this, copy this, and put it in your bot, and then they get to play games in their bot as well. So I think that's all I have for today. Yeah, any questions?
Can you put up the resources again, please?
The resources. Yeah, you got it. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so if you have a, so the knowledge base, is it like a Q&A maker or Elasticsearch?
Just Excel.
Oh, just Excel. Yeah, so I think, so we have something on the roadmap to take like local files and also process them the same way that we scrape the documents. I think what you need to do right now is like export the Excel to like HTML and then load it in. The other thing you can do is actually connect to the Excel and like search. Because we have the data connected, we can actually look up the result in the Excel, And then that's even like we have some people doing that. It's like even simpler. If you need to change what the bot responds to, you just like go literally like change the Excel, and then suddenly the bot has a new response. So that's also. Yeah. So the well, that was not officially supported, but you could like I mean, if it works, it works. But yeah. Sorry, which languages? Yeah. So the language per bot. Let me show you. So right now we continue. We have this list of languages here. Oh, bad words. So it's not going to. The bot is not going to say anything that you haven't put in there. So it's never going to reply with bad words. It might, because we have like a big AI model, it might match some bad words to some other synonyms if that is ever like relevant. But it will never say anything that you haven't put in there. Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah, I agree. Like we have some. I don't know. Like years ago, there's this state tweets thing. I don't know if you can sort of look it up, but that was like a generative model that's like training itself and then like going down the dark path. It shouldn't. Yeah. And so we definitely don't do that anymore. Like even we have a GPT-3 model, which is a generative model. Like it'll produce outputs based on the context. So even that one is like. It's extremely hard to control exactly what it says. So what we do now is like we use it for very specialized, like we use it to write code and stuff like that. So like we don't try to say, oh, let's just use a general AI model with no control and have it say stuff and hope for the best. Yeah. Yeah, but I think so. The problem is like if you use a generative model, you have to sort of know. The problem is on you. Like you need to know all the bad words, and that's really tricky. Like it's really hard to fully control that, and like that's why we don't say, oh yeah, you should go do it. So.
One quick question is, how maybe a little bit less can you send it outside? Is it first in, first out, or can you actually set priorities?
So the great question. So the messages are processed first in, first out, but usually we don't have a queue of stuff that needs to be processed. So like we make sure that internally we have low latency, and we'll process them very quickly. In some cases we're like waiting on an async operation, we're waiting on an API call and stuff like that. Then we actually build up a queue of messages, and they're still like we haven't fully solved it. It's very challenging because in some cases, it's like. Even in a natural conversation, if I'm saying, oh, I'm working on this, and then the person you're talking to, you're doing something for them, and then they start talking about something else, are you supposed to do that after, or are you supposed to drop the input? And that's not always like a clear-cut case. So that's stuff that like we're still working on improving that. Right now, we will, if we're like doing some API call and whatever, we'll handle that API call, and then we'll process whatever else was said, or try to process that as best we can, basically. But there's no way to like control priority and like inject another message at the front today. Thank you very much.